If you want to start or scale your property development business to 8 figures and beyond, then you're in the right place. This is the Property Experts Podcast with Ben Richards and Jack Jiggens, two serial entrepreneurs bringing weekly insights from our award-winning businesses. In these podcasts, you'll learn how we found, funded and delivered over £80 million worth of property in the last 6 years, with templates you can use, deal analysis and deep dive discussions that will help you build your businesses successfully. We hope you'll enjoy.
Hello everyone. Welcome to our Live at 5 on Friday. If you haven't joined before, my name is Jack Jiggens and my absent business partner Ben Richards is actually sunning it up in Antigua. So unfortunately, he's not going to be joining us today, but we have a special episode today. It's being coined Jackquisitions, and it's me running through how you can build your pipeline moving forwards. My role in the business is we run a rental business where we buy individual houses and assets, and we have a development company where we've delivered almost £100 million worth of stock which we've secured. So I'm going to be running through the tricks of the trade and pulling the curtain behind our acquisition process so that you can really dial down for yourself. It's going to be a bit of a 101 also on valuations and how we value land and how we take sites through. So I think this will be really good for sort of beginner people or people starting their journey out, or even if you're struggling to find the deals and you need to go back to basics, because the basics work, and basic process work, you just got to stick to it. Obviously this is a very sales heavy part of the role, and I think that's often neglected. You see a lot of professionals come in, whether they've got quantity surveying background, for an example, and they might not have that sales acumen to understand how to get deals over the line. That's really, really important. So without further ado, I am doing the tech and the talking today. So it might be a little bit challenging at times, but we will see how we get on. Which one would we like? I reckon me in the little corner there. So this is coined Acquisitions or Jackquisitions, and I'm going to be going through the process and the secrets that we've learnt from all of the training that we've been paying people for, and also the things that we've developed within our own business. So I think everyone's business should be taking the good bits from other businesses, ignoring the bad bits, and creating your own process that fits with your flow. So hopefully we're going to be, by the end of this call, you're going to have a bit more clarity on how to make a process to find deals, and that's really important. Quite frankly, there's two main things that are difficult in property, and that's finding deals and finding money. And if you can master the finding the deals, often they find the money themselves. So, bit about us. Our goal is to deliver 1,000 homes and £1 billion worth of property in the UK, collaborating with trusted investors. And we did a bit of a poll a few sessions ago about our core values, and we believe that they're ambitious, transparent, and creative. And we believe that in business, there's 5 pillars of business, and in property, there's 5 pillars in property. Peter Pepper was coming out there. I stuttered on the P. And I'll give you the 5 in business because it will give you a little bit of context. So I believe the 5 areas of the pillars of business that you need to focus on are sales, marketing, operations, finance, and talent. This is a sales module, I would say, finding. But then in the project, once you've understood the roles and responsibilities in the business, in the project, you've also got 5 areas, and that's finding, funding, design, delivery, and sales. And they kind of go hand in hand, because it's sales and marketing are at the front end and also at the tail end. But these are the areas that we think are the 5 pillars. And today we're just going to be delving into finding the deals, the first step. So if you're getting into the property world, this is good for you. Also, I'd say the seasoned professionals sometimes can learn, what's the phrase? Old dog, something new trick. So we're going to be talking about finding today. I don't think my sense of humor is as good when I'm on my Todd. So years and years ago, when I was starting out my journey, probably about a decade ago, I remember going into an audience room with a really reputable speaker at the front of the room, and the reputable speaker said something pretty outrageous as a claim, and said, on-market deals do not work, and proven model that we've been running. We've been doing on-market deals since we set up the business over 10 years ago. And I disagree. I think on-market deals do work, and it's all about how you create the value. There is sentiment to what that individual might have been saying, in terms of the sense that if you get a land deal that's direct to vendor off market, you can make a lot more money in the planning process. But most of the stuff that we've bought, and I'll come on to that later, is bought on market. So what do we look for? Zoopla's, Rightmoves, LoopNet, estate gazettes, wherever it may be, on market, the portals. We explore the portals. One thing I love about the portals is you can set alerts. That's where you find your deals. And for me, it's more about what have you spotted that other people haven't spotted, or where is your competitive advantage, rather than does that deal work. No deal arrives on your desk with a blue, nice red ribbon around it, and it works. You've got to create the deal, and it's all about that creation. We've also considered auctions. We actually sell more at auctions than we buy at auctions, because people that are not as experienced and might do 1 or 2 developments a year might look at going to an auction because it's easy. There's something that needs value creation there. We like stuff that the average investor or developer can't see where you create the value, and we add that competitive advantage, but we still do consider them. You might do direct to vendor, so the old school sending letters or contacting or door knocking. We still do that. It's just a really slow process. I love watching people send out 2,000 letters a quarter. And yes, there is probably more margin in those deals because it's less marketed. There's more scarcity around that deal, but it just takes forever. I can't feed mouths in the business by running a business on direct to vendor. We'd probably be doing a deal a year, maybe more, maybe 2 deals a year. And we've actually managed to buy and deliver 82 purchases. Some of those are houses, granted, but I would have said developments is probably 30 plus. Your own network. This is one I love. So you can find deals in your own network. And how do you find them? Everyone that may go to a networking event, or someone that you might know, might have opposing resource to you. So I was actually on a call earlier today with a guy that I know, and he's working on like one of the most expensive developments in the UK, maybe even Europe, of this decade, and he's a project manager. Now his resource is all that skill, contacts, capabilities, experience, and my resource might be finding deals. So collaborating with someone like that from a delivery perspective, we might then need someone that's got finance resource, so money. And then we've called this sort of love triangle where you create a deal from your own network. So it's all about sharing resource that you have skill sets at to oppose someone else's. So your network is a good way of thinking, what do they need from you and how can you potentially create that? And then last but not least, an easy one is marketing inquiries. So as you can see on the bottom right, that's actually the first hoarding that we put up on one of our sites, which was in Spencer's Wood. And you do get inquiries for land required or whatever it may be. You do get people seeing your branding and building that reputation, and people asking questions about, are you looking for land? We might have someone locally that drives past that who's got an end of terrace house with a bit of scope in a garden, and they contact us and go, whether you guys are developers, could you potentially do anything with my garden, so on and so forth. So that's the where. There might be other ones like down the pub, or where one thing I haven't touched on, I was actually talking to a mentee about it, is like surveyors, like a really good place to find deals. Not the surveyors that we have, because we do measurements, so we're measuring it up before we submit planning. I'm talking about estate managers, asset managers, surveyors that re-gear leases, surveyors that deal with dilapidations. If you've got a 20,000 square foot office going through a dilapidations claim with an existing tenant, guess what? It's going to be vacant. That office could be converted. So speaking to those surveyors that are managing those portfolios for large landlords that you could potentially repurpose their building for. So that's where we find them. I thought I'd do a little bit of a 101 on how we value stuff, because when you're going out and looking for something, you really need to understand the value of something so that you can be competitive in your bidding process. And this is literally like the most basic stuff. And I'm sure there's a lot of you listening to this that are super experienced and thinking that you already know this, but run with me. So we work backwards. So the valuing of a building tends to be the gross development value minus the profit, which we aim for 20% before finance costs as a minimum. Build costs and professional fees, the finance costs and the purchase costs, that's stamp duty, legals, any costs that are associated with the purchase. And then you get the building land value, you get the value of the building. Now, where this is really important to understand when you're looking at a building, this is a building that is an example, the old Maltings in Abingdon being converted to 21 flats and 2 houses, is for us to value that building, we actually got to a purchase price of 1.4 million. Now, what is interesting is now let's value it as a building, not as a developer. So take the developer hat off and now value it as an owner occupier, or alternatively an investor buyer. So we take the estimated rental value. So I'm going to do a quick calculation on my phone. So it's about a 10,000 square foot building. So if we do 20 pounds a square feet times 10,000, that equals our estimated rental value. So we reckon we could probably rent this out to a commercial tenant for about 200 grand a year. Now, let's just assume it's a secondary location. Let's assume the tenant isn't, because when you're valuing commercial buildings, the cap rate or the income multiplier is really tepid in terms of where your location of the building. If it's in Zone 1 London, it'll be worth a lower yield and be worth more. If it's a better tenant, it'll be a lower yield and worth more, like, you know, Waitrose or whatever it may be. If you're renting the building out to, you know, Jim's Taxis, and it's him and his wife that are running the business, and they've only done 1 year's worth of accounts last year because Jim's just gone from self-employed to running his own business. Your covenant strength isn't as strong. So let's say the rate estimated ready value is £200,000. I'm going to assume a 10% yield on this type of building. So if we times that by 10, you get to a valuation of this building at £2 million. Now, why that's really important is, as a developer, we got to a valuation of the building at 1.4 million, but the building as a commercial lease and income is a 2 million. Understanding that valuation is really key for existing buildings and existing land to, one, de-risk it for you, two, make sure you can get a competitive bid across the table, and three, understand who your competitors are, because we were actually outbid on this site by an owner occupier who then ended up pulling out because there's a restriction on the site that you couldn't convert it to anything other than flats and offices, which is, I've never heard of that before, because normally it's everything against resi, resi and B1A offices. But yeah, so we ended up buying the building for 1.4, and we've actually underpaid as opposed to potentially its value if it was let out as a commercial asset. But that's how you value a building as a developer and how you value a building as an investment. Obviously, something's worth what someone will pay for it. So if you bring this to the open market, it's whatever someone is willing to pay for that particular site. A little bit of a plug on our zero referral bonus. If you're not on zero, get on zero. You'll get 90% off for 6 months. I've never actually read that before. And you can check that out going via our link, which is bit.ly/3CRP in all under uppercase, lowercase L, lowercase H, and uppercase 0 or O. Maybe we need to specify that, team. Get on that. Now, how do you value land? Pretty much the same as a building, and you start and you work your way back. I mean, simple stuff, right? So TDV minus your profit, minus your build costs and professional fees, minus your finance, and minus your purchase cost gives you the land value. Obviously, there's slightly less complexity with existing use value of the building, because if there's horses grazing in there, it's probably not worth anywhere near as much of a scratch as what it would be for it to be developed land if it's not previously developed land. But that is how we value land. Thought that would be really important to just go sort of basics. Cool. So I've told you where we can look. I've told you guys how roughly we value stuff up. And now I'm going to go into a little bit more of a detailed look at our deal analyzer. Now, this deal analyzer is older than most school children. It's been around for probably almost 12 years. And every single week we update it, improve it, refine it, automate it, remove stuff, add stuff. Elon Musk says if you haven't had to add stuff back into your process, you haven't removed enough in the first place. So it's all about refining and improving. And our spreadsheet's pretty good now. I can normally review quite a large development within like 5 minutes if all of the schedules are easy to find. So walking through spreadsheets and important things about finding projects. So the most important thing when finding a deal, so this is the how, is your own time, because there's always going to be deals that sort of really attract your attention. There's a deal that I can think of immediately that's kind of like would be a passion project or a trophy asset. And you've got to kind of ignore that element. Don't look at the numbers so much in detail. Don't look at do look at the numbers in detail, but don't get hung up on the numbers in detail. Don't get hung up on how the building looks and feels. That is all really important. But when you're analyzing deals, it's all about being as efficiently as you can. And now a task that I want you to think about to make you better at analyzing deals. Analyzing deals is not about finding the best deal first. It's about discounting the bad deals quicker. That then enables you to find a good deal fast, because otherwise you go into rabbit holes. You spend 3 days analyzing a deal and it doesn't work because you haven't analyzed the risk of that particular deal. You want to churn through those deals. So time is really important. Value your own time. Always have an evolving spreadsheet, as I mentioned, and upskill on costs. Now, costs are a really difficult thing to get your grip on, and realistically, even today, between the process of like offer being accepted and actually getting our tender returns, we don't know how much that discrepancy is going to be. There's so much of a variable in between that. So we have to have contingency and plan for those as best we can. But also, it's really difficult because when you're starting out, you don't have all of the comparable evidence of build costs from before to ascertain where the build cost would come in. So you have to build rule of thumbs. I'd recommend getting a third party that you can bounce ideas off. We're part of WhatsApp groups where, you know, that we run in our business, where people can ask for opinions. They say, here's my site. You know, if you'd have watched last week's episode, how much is a conversion going to cost? We really don't know. But if you give context, like we've got 3 meter ceiling voids, we've got columns throughout, windows don't need replacing. It's basically a fit out. We don't need to put all the waste through the slabs. We don't need any amenity on abnormals. We could probably draw up quite a good conclusion. So get a second opinion. Start looking at old build costs of things that you stacked up before. Speak to other developers. BCIS is a platform that you can use. Get a good quantity surveyor, so on and so forth. So upskill on costs and always trying to be refined and improving your understanding of build costs. Know your comparables. I talked last week about the importance of getting your GDV right because it is the largest number on the spreadsheet. Therefore, if it is 5% out, it has the largest impact on the deal. So definitely dial down your comparables. That's really important. Understand planning. I wouldn't say you need to understand planning, you know, as much as a planning consultant or an architect. I would say that you can make fair assumptions. There are obvious rule of thumbs that you need to think about. So it's really good understanding Class MA and Class G applications are the two sort of main ones for us. Also start considering things like when it is sites that are new build, you could look at potential brownfield sites or sites in settlement boundaries or infill. They're kind of the easier wins and ones that I would probably explore. So much so having a handle on it. So, you know, I know for a fact that if I look at a pub, as in like an existing pub has just shut down, which by the way is a community asset, if there's not a massive car park or a massive garden, I wouldn't even take that further because I know that it's going to be almost 5 years to get a change of use application from a pub to resi on average. So unless you can actually segregate part of that site off as a private development and keep the community asset, so understanding those sort of planning rules enables you to not spend ages on deals that don't work, essentially. Again, back to the time thing. And then last, be creative. Like I said, the deal doesn't arrive on your desk with a ribbon around it. It actually arrives as a diamond in the rough, and you really got to polish it up and cut it. And that is how you create your value in acquisitions and as a developer. A lot of the time, people will say, how did you manage to secure it for that value? Or how did you manage to know that from the outset? It's all about really doubling down on the deals that do look like they're going to work and halving your time on the deals that don't look like they're going to work. And you do end up securing better quality deals. If you haven't already, could you please share the channel with someone that you know? We actually love if someone gives us a bit of feedback. We've actually got a couple on the screen here where people have given us some feedback about the value that we're sharing. But if you could, please rate us, share us with one person that you think would enjoy the episode. We actually did a free one-to-one mentoring session a couple of weeks ago with 3 people that had shared our content as part of the competition. So please make sure you keep sharing. The more you share, the better we can get. And feedback is really, really welcome because it enables us to put things into next week's episode. Cool. Activity, which is a big one for me. If you can see this on the screen, you're looking at 800 deals that have been analyzed and put in a file and stacked, and all of the data that needs to be brought in to analyze a deal to get it out the door. Essentially, we are super active. You know, I've had people, mentees, or even people that I've met at events, for an example, have just said to me, I can't make deals work. And my first question is, well, you know, other than like, hi, what's your name? My first question is like, how many offers are you getting out? And they might say, you know, one every few weeks, or one every month, or one every 2 weeks. And I'm like, it's not enough. You need to be putting the activity in to getting deals secured. You need to be having multiple horses in the race to make sure that you win the race. And fundamentally, deals and property is so slow. I was chatting to a potential investor earlier, and I was like, a big deal that, you know, the investor was like, I want to do £5 million plus GDV schemes, and I've got the money and I'm ready to go now. And I was like, that's probably going to take 8 months to secure. We've obviously got a pipeline and we've got things that are coming up, but big deals take forever, and you need to get the irons in the fire. You need to get those offers out and express interest, and they do take a little bit long to secure. So what you're looking at is we've got out over 800 offers in XP Property. We have a bit of a rule that we'll try and offer on everything. We have a soft offer or a hard offer. A hard offer is if it's fairly clear what the bidding process is, if it's fairly clear what price needs to be pulled together to secure the site, we'll get a fully, letter-headed offer out with supporting documents like track record, proof of finance, references. But then a soft offer is, if we think maybe we're going to offend someone or we're coming in a little bit low, what we may end up doing is actually just getting them on the phone. So a good way of an example of doing that is if we're looking at, I had it with a house this week. I was offered a flip, 425 grand was the flip that I was offered. Actually quite a nice little deal. I was lower than that. So rather than go, I'm at 320, not saying that's exactly where I was at, but rather than saying that, I just put in my call and I said, look, I can't break 400. I just can't make the numbers work. If you're willing to accept below, the 400 mark, give us a call, but I don't think it's going to work for us. You keep it warm, keep the door open. You leave it fair for a follow-up, which I'll come on to later. But you also don't upset them, because sometimes you might be way off. And I always tell agents, especially when it's in housing, I always tell agents, I'm like, look, none of this is emotional to me. I need the commercials to work, and that's it. I've got numbers on my spreadsheet, and if it goes green, I buy it. If it goes red, I don't buy it. They don't have to accept my offer. I can just tell them where I can perform at. If they get a family come in and want to pay 50 grand more than me, tell them to crack on. I understand. I would do the same thing if I was them. But if they don't, I'm a buyer here and I'm ready to go. So it's commercial for you, not emotional. They shouldn't ever actually be emotional. We've closed off 84 deals, which is about a 10% success rate. So I know it does sound crazy getting out 800 offers, but off the back of those, we've secured 84 deals. So we actually average a transaction almost every month, which is mega. And that's the activity. Moving on to follow-up, which, as sad as it sounds, a lot of people have called me the follow-up king. I wouldn't say so much. I just like follow-up. I used to have a background in sales. And rule 101 when you're in sales is you have to follow up. You're kind of the reason that a deal gets secured or successfully delivered, and it's not someone else's job to do that for you. So essentially, what we're working on here is we're trying to evidently follow up on a process, because at the end of the day, if a vendor forgets that you made an offer, that's not their fault, and as a result your business is suffering. So what you can see on the right hand side of here, if you're looking, I think it's probably about 25 deals that we did between 2020 and 2022. So out of those 800 offers and out of the 84 deals that we secured, 90% of those have been on the follow-up. And what do I mean by that? We weren't successful first time round on bidding. We might not have been the top bidder and someone has outbid us. We might have actually not seen the value and pulled from the bidding process. The vendor might have pulled it from the market because the values might not have got to where they've got changing scenario. They might have want to pause the marketing and put it on at a later date. So all of these reasons you're thinking of, basically you didn't get it. And if someone else got it, cool. If they pulled it from the market, cool. But the principle is you need to keep your irons in the fire and also follow up with them. And it can be, if you really like the deal, weekly, or it could be if you don't like the deal that much, monthly. I said calling them is a good way to do it, or you can email them. But we've actually secured deals 3 months down the line once we are outbid or outperformed, or they pulled it from the market, and then we've ended up buying it. So just to give you a bit of an idea for the visuals, everything with a gold circle around it was secured second time round with the follow-up process. So if you haven't got a follow-up process in any of your sales business, you're setting yourself up for failure, basically. I really think that, we have in our surveying company, if we send a quote out to a client, and we don't follow up on that and say, do you still need this service? Is there anything else that we need to do? They might go, oh, actually, hang on, I do need that, but I forgot, or, I got distracted, or whatever it may be. So that follow-up process is imperative for your business success. So make sure you put that in there. Cool. I'm going to have a sip of water. Normally Ben's talking at this point, so I don't need to do this. So I'm now going to share the 3 things from a deal analysis that we need to see, or I think it's actually 4 things that we need to see to do the deal. This is our internal metrics, which runs our business, makes our deals profitable, and enables us to do deals that other people might not actually consider as a good deal, but we think is a good deal. So starting off, and we banged on about this a few times, is we have a stress test model. The stress test model is basically assessing risk against the potential deal going the wrong way. Where this is good is you may look at a deal and go, oh, this feels risky. This feels like a risky deal, whatever that may be. That might be gut. That might be someone told you that. It might be a lot of construction. It might be in an area where sales aren't that active. It could be anything. But this hopefully determines those risks because it scenarios them. So it's a bit like, you know, if you're scared about jumping off a diving board that's 80 feet tall and then you watch someone else do it, you've got the comfort that actually if that scenario happens, you're happy to do that. That's probably the worst analogy I think I've ever come up with, but we'll run with it. So looking at the 3 metrics, we look at gross development value decreasing actually by 10% now. This was probably a smaller deal, so 15% in this spreadsheet. Build cost going up 15%, which is 15% plus our contingency, which is typically 10%. So 25% increase in build costs, and the project duration taking longer than we had proposed, normally 50%. Our rule is if all 3 of these things happen, it's either been a pretty devastating marketplace and deal, everything's gone wrong and it's been completely delayed and you still make a profit, why wouldn't you deliver that deal? So that's one stress test model that we typically use. We also have a annualized return that we focus on in our business. And what I would recommend you do as a developer or business owner is analyze your overheads. So our overheads, let's assume that I won't give you the exact figure, but let's assume our overheads are £400,000. If we're not delivering 3 schemes that return us, for an example, £100,000 per year, we're going to be in the red as a cost as a business. So this is your net income against your gross outgoings. So it's all about analyzing your costs to run your business against the revenue you're going to be generating. Don't look at a deal and be like, it's a brilliant deal. It's 25% on GDV. If that takes 5 years and pays you 50 grand a year and your business costs 100 grand a year to run, you've lost money on that deal. So annualize that amount of income. Super important. We also annualize the return for the investor. So when we start out, everything on our spreadsheet is a prediction. This is something that's happening in the future and we don't exactly know where it's going to be, but we can forecast where it's going to be. And to do that, we would like, for 2 reasons, to look at the return on cash for half the profit for 2 reasons. Some of our investors are equity investors and they want to see what they're going to be getting return on their cash because they normally take 50% of the profits, and we annualize that. And then the other reason is if we're bringing in it as a loan, we know what we can service a loan at by that deal as an anticipation. So this particular deal in front of you, which is not really relative to know which deal it is, but it looks like we might make 49% per annum, which is great. So if someone approached me and said, I'll lend you the capital, but I want 15% back, I know that we can service that figure. Cool. Profit on GDV. Now, this is the most generic one that everyone hears, and I actually referred to it just now at 25% on GDV, 20% on GDV. Typically, it's lenders, bank lenders that do this because it's kind of the leverage amount. It's a good metric for leverage. So loan to GDV, loan to cost, loan to value is a really good metric to understand the leverage position of a deal or a portfolio or a person. And that is why banks and lenders in the finance markets like it. I don't necessarily like it because I feel that there's been a lot of deals. For an example, the majority of the flips that we do in central suites are like 12% on GDV. They are not deemed as a fundable deal in the development space unless you fork out a load of money to have as equity. But as a result, you might not do that deal, but we're making 50 to 80K on these flips. And that's good enough. We do 4 or 5 of them a year and we're happy with that. That 12%, yes, when the market goes the wrong way, that's a thinner line, but we are happy with that. Cool. I hope I haven't lost any of you and I hope you're with me. There's still some really good value to come. So excited for you guys to finish off this app and hopefully put some practice into it. One thing I'll actually say, because it's not in these slides, and I did actually have it in a slide deck before, but I didn't put it in, is like, as this is a sales role, it doesn't necessarily have to be, realistically, it doesn't necessarily have to be you doing this particular position. Right, what I'm getting at is I do acquisitions, funding and structure. Ben does design, delivery and exit. And that's kind of like where our skill sets are best and are best suited. So what I would say to anyone out there that's maybe banging their head against a brick wall from this perspective is are you the personality to secure the deals? Because you might not be. And in that instance, I'd probably recommend that you get a sourcer involved, or you hire someone on a success basis, or you JV with someone that is. Obviously, that's where the JV comes in handy with Ben and I. Back to the slide. So we've talked about where to find them. I've banged on about the importance of how we analyze them. I've banged on about follow-up. We've gone through what metrics you might need to monitor or see in the business. And now we're going to talk about getting a deal over the line. This is like one of my favorite, I suppose, sort of like areas of just securing a deal, because this isn't about real estate. This is about anything. People are either terms or money motivated, and that is literally everything. Like if you look at any deal that's created, whether it's Trump dealing with other continents, or whether it's someone selling something at a car boot sale, you can quantify this metric, or this, I suppose, reasoning of a sale in any context. It could be a multi-billion pound deal, or it could be a £1 deal, and all of this is really, really relevant. And what it is a vendor selling something is either transitioned, motivated by one or two things, and it's like a sliding scale. So the more that they're motivated to one, the less they can be motivated towards the other. Now, what that looks like is, let me give you a scenario. I'm going to give you a scenario of someone is leaving the UK, they're going to go to Australia, and they're selling a car. Now, if they're leaving on Tuesday, they're time motivated and probably care less about money, because beyond Tuesday, the money's negligible and it have to go into storage, or they have to keep it taxed and MOT'd and insured on the road. So they're time motivated. So that seller is time motivated. The car dealer that has the car on the forecourt of their dealership, it doesn't cost them much to keep it there every week, to wait for the right price. So they're money motivated. They're in it for the money. So that is a context of speed and money and how this position works. Someone selling a house is exactly the same. People in auctions are speed motivated. People that sit on Rightmove for 6 months are money motivated. And what you can do as a buyer is create the deal around that. And the way that we do that is, if it's been sat on Rightmove for 6 months, we'll give them the price that they need, but we'll have conditions. Those conditions might be delayed completion, low exchange funds, subject to planning, vendor finance, JV, whatever it may be. I don't really care. But how can you make that deal work so that you are giving them what they need, because they're money motivated, but you've completely adapted the terms to suit you and actually reduce your costs, so that difference in cost doesn't actually cost you any cost, if that makes sense. I think I should probably say cost one more time. Cost. So the principle of this is understand what they need. And the way that we do this in our business is we typically do a dual offer, which is basically, and this is our kind of like generic offer sheet. We will offer something unconditional and conditional, and the uncon is normally speed. Conditional is normally the money, the slower that you do us, this and this and this over the next 16 months, and then we'll buy it off you for a higher value. Obviously, if you delay a purchase for 16 months while you're getting planning and while you're tendering and while you're doing bits and bobs, you're saving all of that on finance costs. You're maybe saving on business rates. You might be saving it on holding costs. All of these things that are factored in, there is a value to that. So that is how we do it. We do a dual offer, which is basically offer A, offer B. And essentially the vendor then comes back, believe it or not, and they either say no to both. But your job is to try and get a preference. Which one do they prefer? They also complement each other, because the lower the uncon bid, the better the higher bid looks, and it kind of softens a cheeky bid or a low ball, as people. I hate the word low ball because I just hate it. I feel that I'm just going to go on a side rant here about low balls. I feel like the terminology lowball is just when someone decides to pay less than what something is worth just because they've seen the price and they want to knock 20-30% off it. That is not how we get to our pricing. I have bought stuff that people would say is lowballed, but there's actually like method behind it. I go, well, actually, this is how it works for me. That's it. Like, rant over on lowball, back to dual offers. So they complement each other. One's obviously higher with some conditions, and one's lower. What you normally get is then feedbacks. They go, actually, offer B is at the right price, but we can't do 12 months. We can do 6 months. And you're like, okay, we're working with something here. Creation of the deal starts and begins. And if you want an example offer sheet, let us know, because we love sharing stuff, especially with you guys that actually watch 34 minutes into this. So what else can you do to make life easier for you for securing deals? I hope that I've given you a bit of a nous on how to get a deal over the line now with a vendor, as well as all those other things that I listed off. Not going to go through them again. So one thing we love to do from a creativity perspective is the industry standard to get something exchanged is 10%. If you're buying a house, probably wouldn't bother negotiating this. It normally is 10%. But with developments, we like it lower than 10%, because every time we put 10% down and it sits in a lawyer's account doing nothing, it's kind of like not benefiting us or the seller. Because that money's just sat there doing nothing. If there's a condition like planning or delay completion or whatever it may be, we want that cash in our pockets to really speed up that process and get that transaction bought. So we actually negotiate lower value. So all of these are actual deals that we actually bought, and the average range between 0.0004% of the purchase price is what we paid on one, up to 4% on others. And these aren't small deals. One of these we bought for 1.1 million. One of them we bought for 2.35 million. So you can see that negotiate the exchange fees, because if you don't ask the question, you won't get an answer, which is very true. Basically, on from that, now talking about negotiating the exchange fund, also negotiate the time period between exchange and completion. Essentially, the time frame normally between the standard property transaction between exchange and completion is typically 4 weeks. Given that that process is actually quite a short period of time, what I would recommend is you negotiate a bit longer. The same deals that are on the previous page, if you can see. So we've got everything between sort of 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, and 12 months. So evidently you can negotiate them, and this is a prime example of negotiating a slower purchase. Cool. I was actually talking to a mentee last night about this sheet, which is basically build rules of thumb. I said to you at the beginning of the call, when we started off on the acquisition stuff, the most important thing is your own time. Now, if you're not building, like, if you spoke to, for an example, I'm going to use an analogy here, like a Formula One racing car driver, they can kind of picture the track in their head so accurately that when they're actually driving, it becomes so second nature, and they don't need the car and the track to formulate that reality. That is kind of how I like to build my brain and my spreadsheets, so that I can kind of guess what I think the spreadsheet is going to say. And the way that you do that is you build rules of thumb. So if you're flipping houses, so you're buying a house, renovating and selling it, you want to be, or buying a site, renovating it, building a site and selling it, you want to be looking at the pound per square feet, because that is a clear transaction of exit. What you're getting in at, what you're delivering at, and what you're exiting at. So for an example, we buy flips at £200 a square foot. We spend about £150 a square foot on it, and then we sell it for £650 a square foot, and that's how we make our margin. I can look at a site on Rightmove with an agent and kind of know if it's 1,000 square feet and it's on the market for 250, I could probably make money. So having that sort of, I would call it sort of back of the envelope mentality in your head with maths, if you're good at maths. I mean, you don't have to be really good at maths. I'm naturally quite good at maths, but I also enjoy that metric. So that's for flips. One thing that works really well for HMOs and social housing is cost per bed. Your portfolio and your revenue is a bed, right? So if you're costing 50k to purchase that bed and 20k to renovate that bed and 80k GDV on that bed, or total cost on that bed, you know roughly in your head, if you're walking around a building, right, 1, 2, 3, 4 bedrooms, I could probably pay 50k a bedroom plus 30k in build. So it's about building this sort of understanding of metrics in your head is really useful. Percentage on GDV. If it's a plot of land, we're paying anywhere between 10 and 25% on GDV. If it's a building, we're typically paying 18 to 30% on GDV. And that's a good metric to have in your armory. Costs on yield is another one. With a rental, from a rental perspective, if you're bringing in income, you need to work out what the cost is to get that yield, because if your cost on yield is higher than your yield, you don't make any money. Cool. Now is the time to look at yourself in the mirror. I'm not being weird. When you go out to market, you need to understand your competitive advantage. And it's kind of like, essentially, you will have things that you do really well, and you'll have things that you do really badly. If you're looking at site A, for an example, that site might be better for someone else, or it might be better for you. And it's understanding your competitive advantage. So one of our competitive advantages example is I'm full-time in acquisitions and I love negotiating. So one of our skill sets is actually acquisitions and negotiating. We have far wider spread than the average developer. We tend to see more sites. We've got a strong network, and we tend to be good at creatively negotiating them. I might create value there that someone else would have just gone in and said, yeah, I'll pay 300 for that. Thank you very much, Mr. Agent. I'll start work on Monday. So one of those competitive advantages is that. Ben's obviously got a background in architectural engineering. He runs his own architecture practice. We lean on his architecture practice from a value enhancement and a value engineering side of things. So we create value in planning and design and redesign. So that's an area where we create value. So a good example of that is if you're looking at a planning application for a site and it's not that very well designed, we might be able to create value there. Construction, we don't. We do fixed price JCT contract. We can't create value in that space. So if it's a land deal where no value can be added in acquisition, structure, negotiation, or design, we might as well walk away from that site because we're not going to be the most competitive to bid on that. A contracted developer would be the most competitive to bid on that. So that is an example of a competitive advantage. And then finance, we look at some sites and go, it's a big asset. There's a bit of asset management play, but our cost of finance is 11%. If it was at 8%, we can make it work, but we don't have that cost of finance. So that is also a competitive advantage. So have in your armory what is your competitive advantage? Answer that question to yourself now. I'm gonna give you like 3 minutes, and I'd love to see it in the comment sections. Just like, what can you create best value at, and actually then think what sites work better for me. So to give you an example, if we're buying a building that's gone on the open market, then the buyer pulled out, but I've caught onto it just before it's gone back to open market. I've negotiated a structured deal, understanding what the vendor's requirements are to get us the deal on our lap, and Ben thinks he can improve the planning of what everyone else thought that we could achieve. That is pure value, and that's a perfect deal for us. So it might be an existing building that we can create value on. That is our competitive advantage and the deals that we should be buying. Now, have a think about yours. You might be a quantity surveyor. You might be someone in construction. Therefore, you probably want quite a complicated, large construction piece within that deal, and that is your competitive advantage. Cool. We're drawing to a close. I hope you've enjoyed it. I have. This is definitely my bag and my sort of skill set. I'm just trying to think of, you know, you're probably thinking there, Jack, you haven't gone through line by line certain things that you do. Some things that I haven't discussed is when I talk about speed when analyzing deals, it's good to get like an actual back of the envelope stacker on your deal stacker. We've got a draft one if you want to comment draft stacker or envelope stacker or fag packet, whatever you want to call it, or make up your own name. Comment in the section below and we can send that to you. But build up, and then, so basically you want to get eyes on as many sites with the metrics in your head, thinking actually that looks overpriced. One thing I actually didn't mention, which is really, really important, is I won't leave my office to view a site unless I've already spent 5 minutes doing a draft analysis on it. That is really important, actually, because if you think about it, if I look at 80 deals in a day, and my head from experience, which comes from the doing, the stacking, the detail stacking and the draft stacking, from experience goes, right, those 40 are a no. These 40 are potential. I'll then put the 40 potential through a draft analyzer. If I were to view all 40, I wouldn't get any deals done because I'd be out on the road. I'd be, wouldn't even be at my desk, blah, blah, blah. So what you want to be doing is making sure you have a draft analyzer, you spend 5 minutes on it, and that warrants you getting in the car and going viewing the sites. Be very strict on your time. So once that's done, you go and view it, you like the site, and then you need to understand the vendor's requirements. You need to dial down on your detailed analysis. You need to pull together a strong offer. You need to offer soft or hard offer. Once that's gone over, you need to follow up. Once it's followed up, you need to secure it. You need to understand your competitive advantage on where you're creating value in that scheme. You obviously need to understand whether you're delaying something or delaying and paying a higher price, or putting a condition on it and paying a higher price. Or conditions doesn't have to just be delaying. Could be planning. Could be I want the GDV to be where you say it's going to be because I don't believe you, Mr. Fender. I think you're exaggerating your GDV values, and that's why your land value is too high. So I'll pay you that high land value if we achieve 10 million GDV, for an example, or £500 a square foot, like you say you do. So conditions can be anything. Get the LD, get the site secured, and then hand it over to someone like Ben. That's it. That doesn't actually just happen in our business. I am very involved in other areas, I would like to think. Thank you very much. I hope Ben's having a good holiday. Ben and Co, first family holiday with the little bear that was just born. So I'm sure he's having a lovely time. Anyway, I'm going to summarize some things that I think are really important. So always be engaged for deals. People call me all the time and say, looking. Of course I'm looking. Like, if it takes a year to buy a site, you know, I'm always looking. That's it. Fact. Always be capital raising. Really key, because you don't want to find 3 deals and then not have 3 investors. It does get easier to find investors with deals on your lap, for sure. You know, it's kind of like fishing without a worm. Not that investors are a fish, but you kind of need the product. And I've had it before where I've gotten really, really well with an investor, and then it goes stalemate because I go, well, I haven't got any deals at the moment. We're full in delivery and we're delivering 5 sites. And I go, well, let me know when you're doing it. It kind of loses that momentum. So always be capital raising and make sure they've got something to look at and move on to. Robust systems and templates. Everyone will always know about me if they've met me or seen a talk by me. I just know the numbers and the systems and the processes, and I stick to them. You know, why should it be so sloppy and unpredictable? It needs to be predictable. It needs to be a process, and you need to follow it. And if you don't follow a process, I'd argue you can't monitor and improve that. Believe it or not, process. Having a process is super important. In any capacity. If you look at any Olympic athlete, they don't get there because, you know, I know that Usain Bolt obviously had an element of eating chicken wings and watching TV. But the majority, 99% of them, which is unfortunately you and I, unless you're an Olympic athlete and you're just naturally good, you need a process, and you need to follow that, and you need to be hitting your nutrients. You need to be doing the training. You need to be doing the resting. You need to be pushing yourself. You need to be doing the motivational stuff. You need to be doing the rehabilitation. And anyway, that is your process. Seek guidance and always be learning. Massive one. Reach out to people. Ask us questions. Believe it or not, we go on live every Friday for free for you guys to ask questions. So ask us a question. Seek guidance. Speak to people around you. Have a good environment around you. That's really, really important. We've got our own communities in expert property. We've obviously got the ground up network community. I think that's imperative to fine tuning a good development business. Just a fun one. If you can do it today, don't wait for tomorrow, because that person that done it today might secure that deal. Short game action, long game plan. And that is get back to kind of back down to process. Like, it doesn't, as I mentioned, doesn't really bother me when we buy a site. Everyone's like, oh, you want to do it as quick as possible and you can be on site as quick as possible. But if you've got enough that you're delivering, you kind of want to phase it to accommodate for your business. So time isn't such an urgent thing. Focus on your goals and not other people's goals. That's a mega one, actually. I've seen it all the time, actually. I saw a developer that actually went under, quite a successful developer, running a really good outfit, probably a similar size to ours. And he just took on this massive scheme, hotel scheme out of his patch, you know, like multi-story, bit of an ego project, I would have thought. And they sent him under. And stick to what you know, and your goals are your goals, and other goals are other people's goals. So don't get sidetracked by the deal. I see it all the time where people go, I'm actually going to mention another developer that I know, who bought a castle. Why the fuck would you buy a castle? Like, we're in this game for commercialities, and I can guarantee neither of those deals made any money. So stick to your goals. And then last but not least, and my favorite one, H for hustle. Cool. I don't know if, I mean, there's not really anything to be talked through on this, because there was a question last week on vendor financing, and I'm going to go into that a little bit now. So if we make me full screen, that is me. Hi, I'm Jack. So vendor financing. So you might have seen our deal, Colney Hatch Lane, that we delivered, are delivering, and it's PCing this summer. In North London. It's essentially 2 semi-detached houses we're converting to, in actual fact, no, ignore me. I thought the Q&A slide was actually there for vendor finance. So yeah, you may have seen that Colney Hatch Lane scheme, and we did a vendor finance on that. So to answer the question, what is vendor finance? Vendor is the seller. Vendor finance is where you're borrowing money from the seller. That can be structured in many different ways, but vendor financing is basically you're borrowing money from the vendor associated with that transaction. The way that we did it is we were buying the site for 2.35 million. Us and the investor bought the site. We borrowed £250,000 off the investor for, believe it or not, 0% for the full duration of the project. So we paid less 250 off the purchase price. We stay in the deal for that duration and we borrow that capital. The reason that you can borrow money off a vendor is it's kind of like an ingrained investor already. Like, what you've got to think about is they're already getting a sum of money for their asset. So they might actually be thinking about, where can I invest in this? What can I do with it? Could I delay the purchase? Talking about creativity again to save on capital gains bill. And the way that that was orchestrated is we had a limited company that bought the asset for 2.35. We lessed off the 250, so he had a loan into our company now, that SPV that we were delivering it, and us and our investor own the asset in the SPV. We still owe the bank the money that they put in. We still owe the investor the money that they put in, and we still owe the previous owner their investment that they put in. And that's vendor finance. It's fairly straightforward, I believe. It's obviously, you're not going to get it on every deal. It would be a dream if you did. If you said, look, I want to buy your house, but you can pay me to buy your house. I mean, that is not really how vendor finance works. You're essentially giving someone a return on their capital for the duration. Their risk is obviously they've got to trust that you're going to do what you're going to do and make money on it, because otherwise they're going to be compromising their position. They may want to take second charge or third charge. There's no bank involved. You could even do the whole debt piece or some of the debt piece on a first charge. They may ask for guarantees. All of this is up for negotiation, but that is how we did a vendor finance, and I hope that's useful. We also actually did a vendor finance on a assisted sale that we did, where we partnered with the homeowner to develop their property. So we never bought it, and they funded the works as well. So they owned the asset, they funded the works. We sold the houses, we paid them back for the works, we paid them back for the houses, and then we had a profit that we split. So we're basically like a well-played JV consultant at that point. So there's many ways you can do it. If you've got any questions, let us know. I think that's been it. That's been the Jackquisitions show, the deep dive on finding deals and building a pipeline, which would enable you to grow your business. And we've obviously done and proven that. And we've built, we're currently delivering over £32 million worth of stock, all of sites that we found in-house from a standstill 7 years ago in our business. So hopefully that was useful. I'd love to hear some questions. Obviously, it was just lonely me today. So if anyone wants to ask questions or comment, please do. And some feedback would be amazing. But yeah, I'm excited to hear what the feedback is on this call. And I guess we'll see you next week.